I'm here with my good pal Reza, and we're going to talk about some stuff that relates to danger.
Yes.
And what we're trying to do is distill a lot of knowledge from a 1,000-page book into a video series.
Yeah, I'm actually going to pick your brain about danger. Now, the title of the book is The World's Most Dangerous Places.
And the title of the podcast is The World's Most Dangerous Places.
Correct. So when you get into chapter 2, after you do your intro and all that, you start talking about danger and what is dangerous. What is dangerous? What is dangerous to you? What is somebody looking out when they're talking about danger? What is danger?
It's a good question, because when I wrote a book called The World's Most Dangerous Places, at some point I had to talk about what actually is dangerous. And remember when I first pitched this book, the booksellers were like, why would somebody want to buy a book about someplace they have no interest in going? And I thought, it's a good point, but do you really need a travel guide to like Paris or Florida or, So I thought, as in the old days when people wrote guides to how to backpack, climb mountains, you do need a book on danger. Now, can you measure danger? That's really the question. People go, of course you can, because you take statistics and you divide by how many people did something, and then if X amount die, something's more or less dangerous. And I'm like, yeah, but that's not what stops people from traveling. Mm-hmm. What stops people from traveling is they fear something. Mm-hmm. So you can imagine I tell somebody, I just got back from Afghanistan, or I just was in Ukraine, I was in Somalia, and they go, it's dangerous. And I'm like, well, there's people living there. There's like little old ladies getting up every morning and making breakfast. So danger would be relative, right? Fear is really what you're talking about. Yes. That you fear these places because you've been in sort of saturated with imagery of warfare, poverty, whatever. But you'll always be surprised no matter what war zone you go to, whether it's Ukraine, you want to have a fancy dinner, you go to Somalia, you want to eat on the beach. Libya, you can visit some great tourist attractions in old ruins. Mm-hmm. It's not one-dimensional. So fine. Let's talk about danger. Let's talk about not what you fear. Let's talk about danger. The first thing you realize is that there are very few statistics about danger, specifically as it relates to countries. Why is that? Because countries don't want you to read about bad things that happen. Right. So I'll get an email from some nice lady saying, I'm 75 years old and I'm going to go to Paris. How dangerous is Paris? I'm like, I'll tell you what. Go on your computer, open up Google, type in tourist plus robbed or tourist plus killed, and pick a window, like the last 6 months or something. And that's probably the safest indicator of what's going on. And what you'll find is petty robberies, maybe some scams that they're pulling on people when they go into places. For example, I did a security report on Mexico. And most people think, cartels, right? Machine guns. I'm like, no, cartels actually don't usually mess with tourists. They mess with competition. Cartels mess with cartels. Right. Statistically, the most dangerous thing in Mexico is drowning. Because people go in the water, they had too much to drink or whatever, and they drown. Mm-hmm. Car accidents, heart attacks, same thing that happens to you at home. So it doesn't sound very dangerous, right?
It's like greasy Mexican food.
Well, yeah, but I mean, the Montezuma's revenge, all that kind of stuff, these are not necessarily myths, but they're not necessarily what happens to you, right? Mm-hmm. Depending where you go. If you go to a fancy hotel versus some small village, you're more likely to get Montezuma's revenge in a fancy hotel than you are in a small village, for example. Yeah. The reason for that is buffets. They'll prepare foods at hotels that'll sit out for hours. And people come in day and night and they scoop up whatever, and 10,000 flies or whatever have done whatever they've done.
Makes sense.
In a small village, they'll make like a road taco right there as you wait, boom. So you can argue. But I was doing this report, and I was researching, and I found this incredible rash of people falling off of balconies, specifically on the sort of east side of Mexico where the resorts were. So I dug in again, and I'm like, oh my God, not only are they falling off of balconies, but they're having sex and falling off of balconies, right? So Google. Well, there's a bunch of old, cheap, high-rise hotels
Yeah.
that have rusty balconies because
Yeah.
they're on the ocean.
Yeah.
And people will go out and lean on the balcony and like, woo!
Yeah.
And I thought, you're never going to see that in a danger magazine or brochure or whatever, but it's a thing.
Like, knowledge is key. So when you start learning about, what is actually dangerous, what's actually going to kill you, it takes away that fear.
But some people are afraid, and
They
some
are
people
afraid.
are not afraid. So
Yeah.
one might ask, if you are going to go sky surfing or bungee jumping in a third world country like Zimbabwe, is that a good idea, right? And it's like, you could argue probably not, right? But in terms of what most people are concerned about, it's the thing they're not aware of. It's the scams, it's the maybe Ebola's going around or something like that. And that's why you help people understand the process. Now, I write a 1,000-page book. It takes almost a year to write that book. It takes probably another year to publish it. By the time you get that book, that information is old, right? And if it's a war, even more so. So really, the reason we're doing this on video is that teaching the process of how to gauge safety, danger, what you should or shouldn't do, who to reach out to, how to find out more information about something is really key. Because if you're in an ever-changing environment and you're in a new environment, you just need to know some of the basics of how do I navigate, how do I plan.
So what is what is a good resource, I guess, if we're going to kind of delve into that? What's a good resource? Does the government provide good resources?
Okay, so let's say you're going to a place.
Yeah.
Pick one, Somalia, Afghanistan, whatever. Most of those countries will not have a structured department that tells you how many tourists were robbed. As a matter of fact, some countries don't report that at all and we're talking about European countries, because there's no need to. Some countries do have tourist safety bureaus, and they do give you information about how many people were robbed or had car accidents. But typically when you're going to Iraq or Iran or Mongolia, there's no such thing. So what you have to do is say, okay, who tracks this stuff? Well, the embassy does track that stuff.
Yeah.
And I remember I was in Nairobi and I walked into the American embassy and I saw 3 suitcases lined up with a bunch of little papers on top. And I'm like, what's that? He said, well, those are people that died and we have to send their belongings back to their families. I said, what happened? And he said, well, this guy was in a rush to get to the airport. His driver pulled over. He got mad. He went out to do something and the truck hit him. Bang, he's dead. This lady took the wrong amount of medication and mixed it with something, and she died because of a chemical reaction. This person, we don't know why they died. We just found their bodies and nobody knows why. And we have to do an investigation. And I'm like, those 3 people did not get up that morning and plan on dying. And statistically, there's no linkage between any of these people. So,
And
yes,
it's 3 people out of...
this is me walking into an office.
Yeah.
Strangely enough, to pick up the dead body of a friend. So I'm just saying that the embassy has numbers.
Yeah.
They can tell you, watch out for this. And remember, when I first started writing this book, the State Department had these little tiny notices saying, don't go there, right? Or nothing. And then if they politically are against a country, like Iran or something, they'll be like, this much information.
Yeah, what did they call it? Like when you
Well, there's travel warnings, and there's different levels of danger.
Yeah, I've seen.
Like for example, if you were going to Gaza today, the State Department would say, no, you can't go. There's no way to get in. There's no way to get you out, and you can get kidnapped. It's the max.
Let's give the listeners a real world situation. Me and you went to Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
What was the process to get to Ukraine?
It's very simple. Well, okay, so you're talking about so let's compare those two. So Gaza today is a war zone in which they're methodically flattening building by building, and something like 20,000 people have died, mostly civilians, and they don't let people in. They don't let people out. So if you were a reporter and you wanted to get into Gaza, you would have to arrange for an embed, or you'd have to sneak in with a local, right? Once you're inside, the U.S. Embassy, which I wouldn't count on them anyways, but the U.S. Embassy would not be able to retrieve you or rescue you if you broke your leg or whatever.
You're basically on your own.
You're on your own, and this is how I view travel anyways, because if you're expecting the embassy to show up and give you a ticket home, good luck. I mean, they do happen to do that. They do it in specific cases, but typically they don't.
Mm-hmm.
So the point is, I'm going to Gaza. How do I stay safe? I say, well, first of all, it's not safe. And secondly, you're going to have to go day by day, minute by minute, with a local who you hope is clued in to where they're bombing, where it's safe, where it's not. And I doubt even they know, right? Now, Ukraine. Ukraine is a semi-functioning country. You don't necessarily need a lot of preparation or whatever to, you can stay in a nice hotel, you cross the border.
Yeah.
There's no airplanes that fly in there now, but you could take a train.
Right.
Nobody gives you a hard time. Everybody's happy to see you. There's missiles coming in at night in the cities, but
I met a lot of Ukrainians here recently just because a lot of them are moving into the U.S. and yeah, a lot of them are going back just to visit family around the holidays, and they actually just go back to Ukraine.
Well, and again, this is a more realistic situation where you go into a place that has dangerous areas and dangerous times and dangerous things, but not necessarily dangerous all the time everywhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if someone said to me, I want to go to Ukraine, I want to do something, I say, fine. They actually have the ability to track where the front line is, when the missiles are coming in, and you can actually plug into a safety system. Mm-hmm. You can actually hire a guy, you can hire a driver or whatever, and they're very, very cognizant through social media. Exactly like you watch these videos where they literally show you how many feet the Russians have advanced, where the shelling is, where the missiles landed. So that's actually one of the few places where you can manage the danger, mm-hmm. if you know what to avoid.
Now, the reason for that, is that because it's a bit more westernized?
It's not just westernized, it's an attempt to normalize warfare. In other words, to say we're still continuing, we're still functioning as a country.
Yeah.
And you're trying to kill us, but that's fine. We're not going to let that happen. And that's a very Western methodology. But, typically wars are in places that are extremely poor, have poor infrastructure, but strangely enough have fascinating sort of, internet / gossip / sort of bus driver info, like networks that are made out of people that you just came from this town. No, I wouldn't go there. The police are stopping people, or you go on social media and there's a guy who's literally filming the combat going on. I mean, it's interesting how they form their own networks, right?
Yeah,
almost like neural networks.
Yeah, social media has kind of.
But again, I would advise you to hire a local who gets that, right?
Right.
And some of the best people out there are local journalists, like stringers, people who cover the beat and then feed stories into other publications. And
that's what you did too. You were a professional at setting up ground networks and plugging into those local networks.
Well,
setting them up.
So I worked as a journalist. I worked for CNN, CBS, National, all these places. And one thing struck me as funny is that they would send white guys from the city into the middle of a war, and then they would have to go hire a stringer who would then say, oh, you want to interview this guy? Okay, let me call my uncle or whatever. And then I thought, well, it costs a lot of money to fly those people and put them in a hotel and then the stringer. Why not just hire the stringers and then feed them jobs and then double check and then publish? And that's how I created ground networks for Iraq, Afghanistan, Somalia, Libya, places like that. And that's basically the same survival method I'm talking about in the world's most dangerous places and also come back alive, is how to use a skill set. Now, I'll tell you a funny story, and it's got nothing to do with me, but it's exactly the same thing. When white people first came to America, whether they be Vikings or settlers or pilgrims or explorers or military, they always met with the local tribes. And if they wanted to go further into the interior, they would say, oh, there's another guy. Yeah, you need to talk to him. This guy just came back from that village, and this is how we're going to get up that river. But you got to wait here and talk to this Indian chief to get permission to go further up the river, and then he doesn't like this guy, so you got to get rid of this guy and hire that guy, whatever. And this is how the West was explored. It was explored by people who went with local guides bit by bit. In Africa, when they kept looking for the source of the Nile, they used Arab slave trades, commerce trades, in which plenty of people walked in and out of the interior of Africa. Mm-hmm. The Egyptians paid for the Phoenicians to sail around Africa and just let them know what was going on. So it's not necessary to know everything all at once before you go into a country. It's just necessary to know how to take those little baby steps and then make a decision to go forward or not go forward.
Right. And how
So-
to ask for
Right.
So if somebody is going into one of these places, can you give them some tips? Like something I do is I make copies of my passport in case I lose my passport. Little things like that. Like, is there tips that you can give someone?
Yeah. So sometimes you don't need paperwork because sometimes I sneak into countries and I don't have a visa, so I don't want them looking at my passport, whatever. But sometimes you go into a place where it's very important to have paperwork because they stop you all the time, and they will take your passport and they will want money to give it back to you, right? So there's a lot of scams and terrible things that can happen to tourists. You can have 2 passports. You can have 2 credit cards. You can have duplicates of everything. And on top of that, you can make, photocopies of everything you
I
have.
did the photocopy thing. Are you saying you can apply for multiple passports? Even
You can have 2
multiple?
passports.
I never
Yeah.
even thought about that.
Okay, so I met a guy in the airport in India. He's an American guy, worked back and forth. His passport was, I don't know, this thick? I've never seen a passport that thick. Saw another one that was this
Yeah,
thick. And they kept stapling.
Yeah,
I
don't think you're allowed to do that.
No,
anymore.
that's gone. But I'm just
Yeah.
saying that back in the day,
Yeah,
you said you're...
I have a thicker one now, but
It's
you have
not
to
that
order
thick.
it that way. No, not even.
It's still, but you can't keep
Yeah,
adding
5
anymore.
tablet
That's gone.
pages,
But what I'm
yeah.
saying is that when you travel a lot, you have to send your passport to get a visa.
Yeah.
And so if you need a passport while you're sending your passport, the people have 2 passports, and it's not unusual if you travel a lot. But the other thing is that sometimes have 2 nationalities. So I'm Canadian and American. So I keep one passport dirty and one passport clean, which means I try to fill up one so that I need to get another one, and I keep one clean. So if I need a passport for ID, I have that passport.
Mm-hmm.
And it's fascinating because when you travel around the world, there's some people that they have 4 or 5 passports. I don't know why, but I mean, they just have them for business or whatever. So identification and digital communications are important, but money is also important, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you need to get money from one place to another, we like to think that credit cards are the currency of the realm, but they don't work at a certain point. So now you get into digital forms of money transfers. And you remember when we were in northern Chad, right?
Yeah.
It was actually easier to get money in northern Chad than it was to go to a bank and try to use your card to get money out. And that's because of Halwalas, right? And that's the ancient way of transferring money.
Explain what that is, because no one's
Well, a Halwala is a network of people. It's an old Arab concept. This guy in this city has like $1 million in cash, and this guy up here has like $1 million in cash. And you give this guy either your banking or credit card information who's in a city, and he tells this guy, yeah, give him $5,000. And then when this guy meets up with this guy or they transfer the money, they settle up, right?
That's the same thing I experienced in India.
Well, it's much more efficient than banks. It's completely...
Well, I was going to say, with the banks, why can you not pull out money with the bank? Because...
Well, it's so the way it used to work, you used to get a letter of credit. We're talking, like, I don't know, 50, 60, something like that. People would go on vacation in Europe. They would go to their bank, and they would draft a letter saying, my client can withdraw up to $200,000 or $20,000, whatever the number was, right? And you would literally go to a bank in Paris, and he would basically give you the money you want, and then deduct it from the bank. It was a fantastic system. But then credit cards got rid of all that, and traveler's checks, whatever.
Yeah.
So then people started saying, oh, I'm going to use my card. Now, I remember in a rainstorm, I wanted to buy a $90 jacket, something like that. And I started whipping out my cards, like, decline. Okay, this one, decline. This one, and I'm like, wait, all my cards are going to get nuked, right? And they're like, oh, yeah, it was suspicious activity. And I'm like, I'm trying to buy a raincoat, dude.
So in the name of safety...
They just shut you down.
Shutting you down and making it more dangerous.
And guess what number's on the back of the card? There was a 1-800 number, which doesn't work in Europe.
Oh, interesting.
So you can't even call to say, hey, dude, stop messing with my card. I bought something on eBay in Yemen. They just like nuked all my accounts. And I'm like,
Jesus.
For your safety, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, so there are different ways of getting money. So you're asking for tips on when you travel. So I'm saying that think about keeping multiple copies or having multiple copies of the things you own, because your card can get eaten, your passport can get taken away. Well, you might have to diddy-mow, right? So also cash. Cash is king. The U.S. $100 bill, the newest one, not the old ones, newest one, is what you can use in almost any country on earth. And you should have at least $5,000, right? And that $5,000 should not be in one giant thing, right? It should be spread around, and you should be able to access it very quickly.
Sounds like a lot of money.
Not today. Where have you been, my friend? Post-COVID?
They carry around $5,000 cash.
So I traveled around the world in the 70s on $1,600. Of that, I bought a $500 ticket to go to Australia, right?
Yeah.
And I traveled for 6 months, right?
For like $1,100, you
right.
traveled around the world.
I bought a bottle of wine for 25 cents. I ate in a restaurant for $2. Fine. As of like pre-COVID, I could buy an airline ticket for $1,000. I could stay in a hotel for $100 something.
Mm-hmm.
I could get a meal for $30.
Mm-hmm.
That's gone. So all those numbers have changed, and it's inflation. It's just people charging more.
What if someone doesn't have $5,000? Like, you get a lot of kids, you got a lot of backpackers still. When I started traveling, and still now, I don't travel with that much money.
Let's just talk about no money. Let's talk about I want to travel, and I have no money.
Yeah.
And that's how I started. When I was 16, I lived in a car. I had no money, so I basically was homeless. So I figured I'm traveling, so I had to get a job. That's the very first thing I had to do. So I picked fruit, right? I worked as the lowest form of manual labor, and I lived in a little shack like Steinbeck, and every day I picked tons and tons of fruit, and I got paid at the end of the day, and that was ate peanut butter and whatever.
So you treated traveling like living.
Yeah, and when
Let's keep it on still to track of danger.
Right, but I'm saying that's a danger, running out of money. That's fear. That's a fear.
Yes.
So I'm just saying that most people say, okay, I got $1,000, I got 10,000, I got whatever, and I'm going to go here and I'm going to do that and I'm going to come back, right? That's what you think you're going to do. You go there, you get on your little motor scooter that you rented for $20, and you hit a tree, and your leg is broken. Then you're thinking, I guess that $5,000 I brought, I'm not going to go very far because I got to pay the doctor, I got to pay for the moped, I got to, lawyers and and I got to figure out how to get back home in a cast and whatever. So.
Dude, I saw so much like when you go to Southeast Asia and you hit the airport, you're just like a bunch of Australians.
Everybody
are just
ripping
just covered. One guy literally covered head to toe. Yeah.
So I'm just saying that when you make that plan with that much money, you should also make another plan for when you need more than that.
So my tip is when is health insurance, and you should check with your health insurance provider if they're going to cover you.
They're not going to.
In that country. Well, mine does. Kaiser does.
Well, they make you pay it.
And
then you have to get reimbursed.
Right.
So, for example, I got hit by a car in Peru, thank God. Smashed all the bits, right?
Yeah.
And I had to... Healthcare was free. I had a gynecologist set my bones. But I had to go in my wheelchair to the dispensary. And by the way, I'm all smashed up, right?
Yeah.
And I have to buy, with my own money, the plaster that they're going to use, the tape, the drugs they're going to inject. I have to buy this with my own cash.
So they gave you like a list, and then you had to go buy it?
So I had to go downstairs, I had to buy it, and then I went up, and they injected me with scopolamine, which is a strange drug. And then they tried to reset all my smashed bones, right?
What do you mean strange drug?
Scopolamine makes you tell the truth. Remember, that's the one I was talking to the doctors while they were operating on me, and I woke up at one point, and the doctors were sitting against the wall laughing so hard they had tears in their eyes, right? And they told me I sang the Peruvian national anthem. I don't even know the Peruvian national anthem. And I'm just saying, scopolamine, you go in and out. It's like it's a really strange drug. And my point is that not only did luckily I got smashed up in a country that has free healthcare. I had a cast that went from here to here. I had one all down my leg. And when I went to fly home, I had to drive to the jungle for a week, right? When I got to the airport, they said, I'm sorry, you can't fly, you can't leave. And I'm like, I have to leave, I want to leave. I'm all smashed up. They're like, you can't fly because you got a cast on. Because your pressure is going to increase and swell up. So I had to go back out. I had a Swiss Army knife, and I had to cut off my cast. I left just enough to hold my wrist on because it was all held with tape and whatever.
Yeah.
And I cut my leg cast off, and I got back in the wheelchair. And then as they were pushing me to the plane, they hit a bump, and they dumped me out on my ass. And I'm just like, ooh, ooh. And then I don't know how I got up the stairs, but they basically helped me up the stairs. I just sat like in just pain for the 5 or 6 hours.
All right, so everyone listening to this and thinking about dangerous situations, you're not gonna. That's a really dangerous situation you found yourself.
No, but here's the dangerous part. Here's
Yeah.
the dangerous part. I was there to go to a drug lab. So I had flown into a place that was very famous for cocaine production. I had hired a drug dealer to go in and negotiate with the lab owners for me to come in and film. And I was stuck in this town. It's called Tingo Maria. I was stuck in this town, so I thought, well, I'll take a day off. I'll rent a motorcycle, and I'll go through the mountains, and I'll see a little bit about what's going on here. And the motorcycle didn't have brakes. And I was on this twisty, windy road. Wasn't going that fast, maybe 25, 30 miles an hour. And this guy came around the corner, and in that part of the world, they drive to the outside, not the inside. And he just hit me square on, like wham. And I had to threaten the guy to drive me. He was upset that I smashed the entire front of his car. And I'm like, look at me. And I had to yell at him to drive me to the hospital. And I'm just saying that this was not planned. This was not part of the dangerous thing at all. And then what happened is that the reason my guy didn't come back is that the commandos raided the drug lab when he was in it, and he hid in a tree for 2 or 3 days before he came back into town.
Okay, that's interesting because that actually leads into a question that I wanted to ask because I think that provides a good point is what do people get wrong about danger? I think that's a good example. You're going there and they're going to say, oh, going to a drug lab is the dangerous thing. But you ride in on a motorcycle.
Well, the lesson is I was carefully planning the amount of risk that it took to get into a drug lab to film. So I was getting permission. I was using the right guy. I was making sure that everything was copacetic. I was going to sneak in, film, And I've been to drug labs before. And
you've been to Colombia and stuff. Right?
So it was the vacation part that I didn't plan, right? It was the thing that I thought I was just going to go do this thing. And I guarantee you that the most dangerous thing you could probably do is rent a motorcycle in the mountains of Peru and on a rainy day, and that's probably far more dangerous than going into a drug lab. Now, did I analyze it that way? No, because I was thinking about the other thing, the waiting. So fear and danger. Most people would say, oh, that's fun. Let's go jump on a motorcycle. And if I said, no, let's go to a drug lab in the middle of the jungle, they go, oh, no, that's too dangerous. So analyzing danger, analyzing risk, looking at what you're worried about versus the threat that it might cause, this is part of the process.
That's a good tip. Okay, so with our tips, we got planning, we got money.
Well, just back up. Worst case planning. Like if you want to plan, first of all, I tell people take as little stuff as possible. So when I said about the $5,000 cash, that's still not enough if you're in a war zone. You still need at least 10, right? And 10 is like the minimum, like 9,000 is the minimum you can travel with without getting into trouble or having to require it.
Over amount of time?
No, if you go in and out of the country, you have to declare more than a certain amount.
Yeah.
Right? And if you have to, they're not going to take it, but you have to declare it, right?
Yeah, and declaring it is usually 10,000, right?
Yeah, and the other thing is when you go into countries, sometimes they're really strict. You can't carry more than a couple of hundred or 500, so you have to be careful. But having cash is your insurance to get out of there. So you pick a travel that you've been on or a trip or whatever, and you figure, okay, bang, I'm sick, I got malaria, I got this, I got that. What would it take for me to get out of there, right? The second thing is you mentioned insurance, right? There actually is very, very good travel insurance. And I got to be really clear about this because travel insurance I'm talking about is medevac insurance. Now, the chances of somebody needing to be medevac are very slim, so it's cheap. I'm not talking about the flight insurance if your plane crashes. Yeah. I'm talking about, you say, I'm going to Mali, I'm going to Kenya, I'm going on safari, whatever. If I get into a car accident or if I get into a medical emergency, a private jet will come with nurses on board, load me up, and fly me to the nearest, not home, to the nearest professional medical center. When I'm there, they can liaise with my insurance company, and they can figure out how to cover the bill. You're still going to get stuck with the bill, right? But sometimes you can work it out so that your insurance covers whatever happens over there. The third thing is, how do you get out of a country? Like if you go into a place, how do you get out? Like, what does it physically take? Do you have to hike out? Do you have to drive out? Do you have to rent a car? Do you have to steal a car? Do you have to charter an aircraft or whatever? And sometimes chartering an aircraft is not as much as you think it is. You know, when you think about an emergency, right? Mm-hmm. So think about worst case scenario and think about how you get out of there. And what you really don't want to do is just assume that there's someone there that's going to help you. Because, you know, it's like first aid kits.
Yeah.
It's not for you. It's for the guy that's going to do it to you, right? Like, you hope that guy knows first aid, not you, because you'll be knocked out in a car accident, and you hope that guy knows what a tourniquet does or whatever. So
that's planning too.
Right. I mean, so being with people that have skills that can get you out of situations.
That even goes into a day hike.
So the last thing is communications. Mm-hmm. So I always recommend a sat phone, right? Now there's cheaper versions of it, but if you have, let's say, like a real sat phone, an Inmarsat, or uses either low or high satellites, you can call anybody or just about anybody or anything in the world. Now you can get Thurayas, which are just for Africa and Europe and stuff like that, so you can be picky and whatever. But it's relatively cheap to have a satellite phone or a satellite add-on to an iPhone. In other words, you can buy a clip-on device. And if you're really cheap, you can get just a text version.
Like a spot or
It's called InReach. No, well, you got to be
InReach.
careful because there's things where you push a button.
Yeah.
But you don't know if anybody's coming, right?
Right.
So when we were in the Sahara Desert and our car broke down, I was able to take my iPad with an InReach and send people texts. And when I sent them a text, it sent them an exact coordinate of where we were, right?
Yeah.
So let's say you get into trouble. Why not have that international communication? And we're talking $60 a month, something like that, and you can turn it off if you're not using it. So these things done well are great insurance policies.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying bring like 10,000 pounds of batteries and water and medicine and all that kind of stuff. Just bring the things that you need.
But just with the planning and having the copies and having the communication, you kind of set yourself up, because the survival situation is not one thing going wrong. Usually it's compounding. It's like one thing happens, then another thing happens, and another thing happens, and then you reach a point of no return.
Well, I'll give you an example. The most typical thing that's going to happen is that you will get some kind of intestinal bug, right? Mm-hmm. Like Pakistan or whatever, and I carry Cipro. Well, you need a prescription for Cipro over here. Over there, it's free. But how do you know what to put together in your little first aid kit, right? You know, do you really need a tourniquet? Do you need to have some kind of painkiller? Do you need to have some kind of... and most people say, oh, you take Imodium, you do this. Like, no, dude, you need to get to the good stuff right away, right? Yeah. And things like intestinal illness may not seem like much, but they can get very bad very quickly, and you're incapacitated. Yeah. And now you don't have the ability to travel or move or anything. And I was in Mali, and I think I had dysentery. And I'm lying on this floor, just water coming out of every orifice, and I'm weak, and I'm just like a scene out of Sheltering Sky, and I'm hallucinating. I can't go to get food. I'm in this sort of cement building that I was staying in, and I didn't have Cipro. Like if I would have had Cipro, I could have popped a couple of 500 milligrams twice a day, something like that. I would have started coming out of it. I could have done a harder dose because pilots used to just hardcore take the full dose and then be back on their feet.
So when you're talking about Cipro, you're talking about ciprofloxacin. So
I'm talking about something that kills really bad bugs in your guts.
Saying for people,
and I'm not a doctor. I'm not a doctor. Yeah. But I'm saying get to the good stuff. Yeah. Don't buy crappy commercial versions of it. But I mean, like, I want Imodium. I need this. I need. Right. Go to your doctor. Say, I'm going here. Put together a little kit, write me a prescription. You'll be shocked what it costs here, but it's probably better to have it here. But if you go over there, these things are pennies, right?
Yeah, that's what I do before I travel. I go to the doctor and I get a prescription for Cipro, pick it up, I get an EpiPen, Those become more expensive.
Well, like malaria, for example. Like malaria is a problem in certain places, and if you go to a doctor here, he'll say, "Well, take this," and you go, "Okay." So you go to a doctor there, like Malaysia, and you go, "No. The mosquitoes are all. It doesn't work. You got to take this." And you're like, "Damn!" But this is going to be dirt cheap over there versus over here. So
even when you get in country,
yeah, of course.
jump over.
If you're going in the jungle on an expedition, if you're going to a place where there's no medical care,
yeah.
and there's everything from dengue to
Shoot,
whatever.
when I cross the border over to Mexico, that's what I do. I hit the pharmacy and I start picking stuff up.
Well, Mexico, they have doctors and hospitals, but what I'm saying is the process, right?
Yes.
It becomes
Remember it.
becomes a natural process.
Yeah, and you always do.
I mean, a doctor in Afghanistan, be happy for $25. I mean, you know, and he might say, "We've got this going around," or "Don't drink the water," or like over here we have a really bad outbreak of cholera, whatever, you know. So, and also the internet is helpful up to a certain point, right?
Yeah.
There's CDC has massive databases of all these terrible diseases you can get, and most of them you'd like. I really don't want worms in my eyeballs, and I really don't want all these bad things to happen. But there are areas where they have infestations.
Yeah. So that's good we got into this because are diseases what is most likely going to kill you? Is that the most dangerous thing when you're traveling?
Okay, so here's an interesting thing. I have never had malaria. I spent years in Borneo, Africa, Burma. I mean, traveling through really dense jungle places that everybody around me got malaria. And I've always wondered why I never got malaria. And it's because I used to raise mosquitoes. So I used to raise Aedes aegypti mosquitoes, and I watched how they hatched and how they fly. And we have them here now. They're called ankle biters or something like that.
What do you mean you raised them?
Raised them from eggs. I went out, I got eggs in a microscope and hatched them and watched them turn into pupae and whatever. And
Was this your job?
no, it's in school.
Okay.
It's a school project.
Okay.
But the point is you understand them as an animal.
Right.
Now, we had a little quiz. What's the most dangerous animal in the world? Well, it's a mosquito, right? Because malaria and people die of malaria. But mosquitoes operate a certain way. And I used to work in the bush in the Yukon. Thousands, like clouds and clouds of mosquitoes. But they're not going to kill me, right? But the ones in Malaysia next to villages will kill me because they're picking up malaria and all kinds of diseases from the people and then transferring it. So the reason I don't think I ever got it is I always wear long sleeve shirts. I wore wool socks and long pants. The people around me would wear these little like exercise gym shorts and T-shirts and whatever, and I thought, you're going to get malaria, and they did. Because at night, there's that period between sort of 4:30 and 7 o'clock in the tropics, when it gets cool, these mosquitoes come up and start feeding, and if you're sleeping at night, they'll feast on you, right?
Yeah.
And the more often you get hit, the more likely it is to be a malarial or a vector mosquito.
I think that's one of the reasons you've survived so many things is you don't try and impose your will on places you go and travel, and a lot of people do that. But instead you go and you see what it is, you see reality for what it is, and then you act accordingly.
But I just want to add something. So the other thing is that some places people just have malaria. They say get it out of your system, which I don't recommend at all. But like South Africans and people that worked in the military, slept in the jungle for years, they just have malaria. And every time it pops up, they treat it. So they just assume they're going to get it, and then they treat it as a natural part of their existence.
I didn't know that. That's interesting. On that topic, I think they're now just came out with a malaria vaccine that they're testing.
They're trying,
right
but
now.
the problem is...
like this week, supposedly they've made some advancements.
But you can take things like doxycycline, right?
Yeah.
It's an antibiotic. It breaks the chain, right? It breaks the reproductive chain, right?
Yeah.
So if you understand that the mosquito is an animal that functions a certain way, then you respect that.
Yeah.
If you understand that certain drugs will break down the infection and reproduction, take them, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you can't take malarials for too long because your liver gets nuked, right?
Yeah.
So could you take a vaccine and could malaria be a part of history? Why not? But they have a bad habit of becoming resistant because humans build the resistance into the mosquitoes and then they pass it on.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember the old Larium days where they're like, oh, you're going to go overseas, take some Larium. And I remember watching two guys trying to kill each other in a tent, thinking there was a lion in their pup tent, and each one was trying to kill the other one.
Yeah.
And just the bizarre dreams of severed heads and babies, dead babies, thinking, what's going on here? It's like, and then finding out later that Larium's like the worst thing you can take.
Yeah, you're like literally trading one bad thing for another bad thing.
Yeah, and the locals would say, well, you just get malaria, or here, take doxycycline. Just don't take it for like a year, right? Just if you're going in, take doxycycline and keep it for 2 weeks afterwards, whatever. Yeah. But again, I'm not a doctor, but I'm just telling you that the people that live there know about malaria more than probably your doctor or the CDC does back here.
Yeah. All right, one more question to wrap this up. Do you think it would have been more dangerous if you stayed home and didn't follow your dreams?
Well, first of all, I didn't dream of being homeless, so that's one thing. Secondly, what my dream was shaped by things I didn't know that I was curious about, right? I didn't have an image of me as something when I was a kid. I had no idea what 40-year-old me or 60-year-old me would look like, right? I just had a real passion for education. I was just interested in things, and those interests and those passions took me to foreign exotic places and then ultimately to wars, into conflict, into global geostrategy and whatever. And I'm still saturated in that curiosity and that thirst for knowledge, because I get up in the morning and I read the news about everything from Sudan to South Africa to Somalia to Ukraine, whatever, because I'm interested. I'm also involved. In other words, I have friends in these areas. I have projects in these areas. So, answer your question. I don't expect someone who's 15 or 18 to have a hard idea of what they're going to be when they're 25, 35, 55, 65. The best piece of advice I can give people is 5 years is a reasonable expectation of a goal. So if you're 15, talk to your 20-year-old self. What have you accomplished? What do you know? What do you do for a living? What are you interested in? When you're 20, talk to your 25-year-old persona, or do it every 10 years if that's too, precise. And I remember thinking, well, I think what you do and love when you're 20 is a lot different than when you're 30. It's a lot different when you're 40, 50, or 60. So, for example, when I was 20, I'd already been a copywriter. I'd already achieved my dream of being like a guy that works in advertising and whatever. And I thought, what should I do? And I got involved in big productions and shows and marketing. And then when I was in my 30s, I was a family man. I was raising a family, had a beautiful house, beautiful wife, beautiful kids, nice car, had a business. I mean, I did all those things because I had energy and wanted to make lots of money. When I was 40, I completely switched my career to become the guy that goes to war zones, and I became a brand, right? I became the guy that goes to the worst places on earth and comes back with really interesting stories about what it's like there, without an agenda. When I was 50, I was running ground networks. So I was not entertaining people with books or TV shows, because I realized that the worst thing in the world is to be someone who's on TV, who's in the media, playing yourself. And that's a really strange concept. So imagine, before you do the TV, before you're famous, before you're in the films, before you do the big interviews, you're a guy that does something really interesting, and you just do it. You don't promote it. You don't. But people are saying, "My God, you go here. You've been there. You met the Taliban. You've been this. You've been this battle. Blah blah blah." He's like, then you get a TV series. Now you got a bunch of people around you. Like, hey, what are we doing next week? We just were in Liberia. Let's go. We got to do this. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm portraying myself. I'm not doing what I want to do per se. I'm doing it as entertainment. In other words, I'm not faking it, but I'm doing it because I've got a sausage factory now. Mm-hmm. And then when you write books, it's like you go deeper, which takes longer, and you go much deeper into things than doing something every year. So these all require rethinking who you are, reinventing yourself to be something that's appropriate for your age. So at age 60, or let's say in 2 years I'll be 70, right? I'm going to be physically less able than I was to take the beatings I was at like 30 or 40, right? But I'll be a lot smarter. So what's the value of me getting killed? Like a bullet comes along, made in China, whack, I'm dead. What's the benefit of that? That I'm brave? Of course I'm brave, right? But I'm not stupid. Maybe my benefit at age 70 is to teach the 20-year-old and the 30-year-old and the 40-year-old about how to transition into things that let them live their life, right? And I'm not saying that everybody just starts off and ends up just doing the same thing their whole life, but I think it's completely okay to understand that every decade of your life, you're a different person. You're a lot smarter than you were 10 years ago. You're a little bit different in terms of your economic status or your marital status. You might have a different idea about politics or about the world, or you may want to go to a different place, or you may want to write a book or a movie script or something. And don't look at it as an evolution. You know, they talk about the hero's journey. You watch movies about a guy starts off like a little poor kid and he gets successful and then he becomes the biggest and the best and then he retires. Like, no, these are linear, old ideas. You know, most people I know, I'm talking about young people, millennials, whatever, they do many things. They're not tied down to like, I'm this. And, you know, I used to watch people like famous designers. I used to have a design company called Digital Arts. They would start off being very talented, working very hard. They get too many clients. They'd hire people. They would just be the executive of a studio. Yeah. And then that flavor would go out of style. And then suddenly they would just crater because they didn't have the energy or the growth. And I kept thinking, yeah, there's a yin and a yang. There's a season for everything. There's an arc. But that arc is a lot shorter than what people think. That arc is really, I'd say 10 years is safe. Like, so just so you know, I had my horoscope done by a complete stranger when I was in my 20s. And I don't believe in astrology. He came back and he said, wow, it's like everything in your horoscope is all down here and it's like this. So every 10 years, your life is going to change dramatically. I said, you can see that from that? He said, yeah, and it starts at the 5-year point. So I went back. I'm like, well, I'm only 25, so how would I know if what you're talking about is true, right? So now I look back and I realize that it's actually a function of boredom. So I am doing something completely different every decade, but it starts at the boredom starts at the 5-year point, where I start sort of drifting away from the intensity and I start drifting towards something else, right? And imagine, you know, going to a war and going like, I'm in a war. So what, right? People are getting killed. So what? People are screaming and yelling and look at the injustice and we got to do something. And it's like, I get it. You know, I've been to 4 dozen wars and they're all the same. They're all the same basic disaster happening that people need to see but don't necessarily react the same way. Mm-hmm. So I approached my interest in that in a different way. Like, so I wrote a book to get people to go into these areas or into jobs that relate to danger and conflict, almost like a guide, you know. And then I did media coverage to show people, like, you know, for Vice, this is what it's like. This is, look, watch people kill each other, right? You know, for Vice and National Geographic, whatever, Discovery. And then I did these big scoops, right, which like blew people's minds, like John Walker Lindh, like the very first member of Al Qaeda that's captured in the war on terror is an American from San Francisco, and it's like, boop, you know, and I was like, yeah, next job. Anyway, so the point is that it was like the second Irish jihadi I'd interviewed, right? I remember I went to Chechnya with Kill. But my point is that, okay, that's it, I'm done, right? I did it, move on. Right. So the smarter you get, or the more you learn, or the more that you gather inside your head, the more efficient you should be at providing that benefit to people. So right now, you know, I'm fascinated with books, with documentaries. This podcast is part of that, is to open up the idea of looking at how the world is really, you know, I won't say a dangerous place, but it's an aggressive place that makes you think, right? And the more you get back at it and try to change it or shift it or whatever, the more reward you get out of your life. Mm-hmm. And you can do it through different ways. You don't have to be a photographer, a journalist, whatever. I mean, right now, I think journalism is dead, right? Journalism is basically a guy with an iPhone getting shot by somebody, and then they just pick it up and run it on every news outlet and move on to the next thing. You know, it's very rarely monetized. Writing books still exists, making documentaries still exists, but not in the same way that it used to. So right now, and 10 years from now, I'll be doing something different 10 years from now. So right now I'm using different forms of media to communicate how to deal with danger, with fear, with risk, and whatever, and to benefit the listener. And somebody asks me a question, I don't give them an answer that I read in a book. I give them an answer based on my experience. And you can discard it or you can take it. But one of the things that I remember is, I was in combat with Special Forces, U.S. Army Special Forces. And they're very smooth, slow guys. They don't brag. They're real quiet, whatever. They always got their hands in their pockets. And, you get into a battle, and it's basically like sitting on a hill watching the locals fight it out. Because, like, why would you run down there and get killed? But if things go south, they run down there and they fix the problem. And that's kind of me right now, right? I'm not jumping up and down with shaky camera, hiding in a trench, getting bombed. I'm sort of like the guy that when I'm needed, I'll be there. But right now, I'm just helping other people get to that place.
Mm-hmm. Well, we thank you for that, and we're glad you didn't stay home and you went out there.
But I am at home. But
you didn't stay at home.
But let's talk about that, the balance perspective.
Mm-hmm.
People say danger, people say safety. There's a yin and a yang, right? What's safe, what's dangerous, right? If you don't understand danger and risk, then you will not appreciate safety, right? Mm-hmm. And starts with your brain, your health, your body. What's a safe thing to do? What's a dangerous thing to do? It goes up to things that you expose yourself to that maybe you shouldn't, that cause long-term. I'm a cancer survivor. I can't say what caused it, but I survived cancer because I'm aware of my physical quality of life. So I make sure that I get checkups and things like that. I don't brag about getting smashed up and having titanium in my body. I don't think that's a good thing. I mean, I think that you have to be really focused on the important things so that you can do the insane, crazy things with some confidence. Mm-hmm. Being physically healthy, being mentally healthy. If you're not mentally healthy, this is not the thing for you to do. Mm-hmm. If you're not physically able to hike up and down mountain paths in the jungle for 3 days, it's probably not the thing you want to do. If you can't look at people dying, if you can't react the right way when people are screaming and running, it's not the right thing for you to do. So it's steps, right? And if you get into that, then always make sure that you have a balance in your life. You don't want to be lonely and sad when you're like 40. You don't want to be sitting there telling people stories while you're chain smoking cigarettes and shooting scotch. You don't want to be damaged by this. Mm-hmm. You want to be able to say, look, there's love, there's hate, there's pain, there's joy. Keep the spectrum wide enough so that you have the right view of things. Mm-hmm. And again, that's you'll never sell a book writing that, but it's true. Like, balance in all things. Don't go too far out. Always come back. Yeah. And build a life, with people that love you and you like talking to. Build a place that you like to sit in, and then go forth from that. Yeah. And it's like coming back into a paradise. It's really the funny thing is that people that have PTSD. We search for answers, like why do some people have PTSD and some people don't have PTSD? I don't have PTSD, but I have analyzed myself coming directly out of a war, right? Where everybody literally is trying to kill you, like bullets and explosions and whatever. And come back into the office and with the distinct feeling that people are trying to kill me. We're talking about Southern California, right? Yeah. Bang, car backfire. You literally get ready to engage or do something that's life or death. Some guy cuts you off and you just feel this. And then I realized, no, you need a good week or two away from all that. You need to decompress when your adrenaline is pumped so high and everything's so real and so intense. Coming back to the real world is a little scary. Mm-hmm. And another example is that when I used to do expeditions in the jungle, I'd get on a plane, I'd be home in a couple of days, and it's just the noise. I couldn't handle the noise. Traffic, planes, people talking, whatever. I was so used to silence. And I was so used to the sun coming up at 6:30, going down at 6:30. Certain animals start chirping and singing. The gibbons start howling. I was into this whole, like, this is the real world. And then I come out and it's like, whoa. And I realized, wait, what's more stressful? Going on expedition in the jungle or going to a war zone where you're controlling every movement you make and measuring if it's safe, dangerous, whatever, or being in just sort of this random, what we call civilization.
Yeah, this man-made reality.
Yeah, and I'm just saying that I could probably write a book about civilization, the world's safest places, and it scare the hell out of people.
Totally.
We're just looking at a chart, right? Like,
that's such a great point.
What's more dangerous, riding your bike or sitting in an airplane? Well, most people fear flying, but they don't fear riding their bike. And yet riding a bicycle is far more dangerous than flying on an airplane, right?
Yeah.
So you're more likely to slip and hurt yourself in your bathtub than you are in a war zone. So it's like, wait, how do these statistics make sense, right? And it's like the chart that shows your chance of dying in a certain window of time is pretty flat until you're 68, 65, and then it just starts skyrocketing up until you have a 20% of just dying within a 2,000-hour window, doing nothing, just sitting. And I'm saying this measuring risk is scary because you realize that the things that you don't mind, like jumping in an Uber with some guy that's on some medication and going off to the airport or something, is far more dangerous than the flight that takes you to Ethiopia or some dangerous place to cover a war. So anyway, so that's my point, is that humans are designed to manage and handle risks. They're designed, they got two eyes in front, they're meant to walk, they're meant to approach. So there used to be a system whereby people could travel around the world, integrate with people they saw, even though they didn't speak the language, communicate either the need for trade or information or whatever, and move on to the next point of the move. So this ancient form of navigation is actually set up with a lot of blocks now. You think about what you go through to get out of this country and into another country, and how you were viewed as a threat. You have to literally take your shoes off. You have to take your belt off. You have to, as if you were like planning some horrible thing. They x-ray all your luggage, they x-ray all this. You put you in a seat, they monitor you. You get to another country, they run you through a database to see if you're up to no good. And like all humans are treated like that right now. So you're treated as a threat the second you leave, or move, or travel anywhere. So how did we get there? Like, instead of like, oh, welcome to my country, right?
I think it's very weird and dystopian. I think like we've always kind of had that in different ways. I think
that's not true. That's not true. That is not true,
well,
because
I'm just saying, like we always had a fear of the other. I mean, it was probably
correct.
village to village. Was
Wait, but danger, fear, danger, right? So what did we do? We went like this.
Yes.
We showed them that we weren't armed, right? And we approached, and we had a gift.
Yeah.
And
so
we were
this modern society is one that's really based off of fear, and that's why it's kind of great. I completely agree with you. I completely agree. I see humans so fearful in the same things, and I feel like that is a problem with our critical thinking and our thinking skills. Like, most people fear say something like autonomous driving, although statistically that is going to be way more safe than a bunch of monkeys behind.
But it's not human.
I'm not done.
Okay.
And then also, what about and then the COVID vaccine is a perfect example of this as well, and the hysteria that surrounded that after the fact. And I mean, you can just pull up, and I've had that same experience. It really helps me hearing somebody that's as traveled and as wise as you having that same experience about getting back from an adventure or travel, because I've had those exact same feelings, and then wondering if those feelings are valid. If I'm like, oh, am I just crazy? Do I have a little PTSD? Because I remember coming back from about like a 3.5 month trip, and a month of that, or 6 weeks of that, was literally just hiking through the Serengeti in Africa and sleeping next to a fire every day. And when I got the first day I was back and I was driving down the 405, I was like, what the hell am I? This is weird.
Yeah, but remember, in Serengeti you had lions, things that eat mammals, right?
Yeah.
But you're not afraid of those because they're there and we're here and whatever, right? You get back here and it's all random, right? Now, let me just say something about travel. So, at the time that people used to travel without borders, there was a standard system, whether it was Somalia and you're a camel herder and you need to cross another clan's lines. There's a standard procedure for interfacing with people, sharing food with them, telling them where you're going, what you're doing. Oh, you know so-and-so, yes, give my best to this, blah, blah, blah. And that's standard, right?
Yeah.
You know, I used
Very
to...
human.
Very human. So I was driving down the road today. I saw this beautiful house. Sun was going down. Yellow window. I said, I gotta ask this guy if I can take. I knock on this guy's house. I think it was like Iowa or someplace. He's a farmer, and he said, yeah, "Can I help you?" And I said, "Can I take a picture of your house?" And he goes, "Sure, I don't care." So he comes out, and I'm setting up my Hasselblad and everything, and I take this picture, and I said, "Well, give me your address. I'm gonna send you these pictures." And he's like, "Yeah, I've never taken a picture of my house." I'm like, "Why?" So why would I? I live here, right? I don't. So we developed this relationship from a complete stranger knocking on the door. Now, if I was in another place, some guy might shoot at me because he's like, "You're on my property. Get off my property. What are you're up to no good." So what's the difference? Well, it's like there be dragons. If you live in an environment where people are constantly telling you that something's dangerous, that something you don't know, something that's out there, something that's different, and we have this problem with immigrants, right? We have a group of people telling us that people coming across the border are bad people.
Right.
In actual fact, they're families and kids, and they stand politely by the wall because they have to be on U.S. soil in order to make their appeal, and they very politely go off and get processed and come back, right? When you travel, people say, "Oh, like Muslims, Christians, whatever, they're terrorists, they're this or that." No, this is an artificial fear, right? And yes, there used to be artificial fears when people would fall off the edge of the world, or these guys were cannibals, or whatever. So
people really believed in this.
Well, they still believe in it. It's just they call them different things, right?
It's true, yeah.
Anyway, so what I'm saying is that if you understand the process for greeting strangers, you're on their property, their land, you understand the simple process, like, "Hi, my name is, can I do this? Who are you from? Where are you from? Blah, blah. Oh, what a nice house you have. Come on in, have a cup of coffee." Really simple social skills. You tend to find that the vast majority of humans are just like you, as long as you follow the rules. Now, people will whip up a camera and start and like, "Oh, I took his picture," and they'll get punched in the face. It's like, "You took a picture of my wife." You're like, "What?" "Yeah, well, that's my wife, and in my culture, we don't take pictures of women." You're like, "Oh, I didn't know that." You ask him, "Can I take your picture?" He'll say, "Fine, but don't take a picture of my wife," right? So when you say, how do you navigate dangerous places? You make friends. You talk to the cab driver. You talk to the hotel clerk. You talk to the guy in the pool. You talk to the guy that sells you the whatever. And you basically build an ecosystem of friends, contacts. And with telephones and internet, there's no excuse not to gather these things and also share things. So like, I used to take Polaroid cameras and like, zzz, and literally hand the chief a picture. Well, I'm the coolest guy in town, right?
Yeah. Genius.
Now I can take my phone and I can send it to his email. I'm still bartering, right? I'm taking and I'm giving, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, that's the lesson, is basically keep doing that until you run into the guy that punches you in the face.
Okay. All right, well, we've gone an hour.
Okay.
Over an hour.
All right.
So I guess we should...
Should we shut everything down? And
wrap
then,
this up? Well, yeah, but the book is The World's Most Dangerous Places. Today we covered danger. Next time we're going to cover some personal stories about kidnapping and how to keep yourself safe from other people.
so danger is also fun, right?
We should talk about why danger is
I'm just saying that what scares the hell out of one person can be very rewarding to another.
Yeah.
And you got to remember, as I said before, some people, when there's a fire, some people run in the building and some people run out, right? And it's very important to understand if your personality can handle the onslaught of fear, sensory overload, foreign languages, people yelling at you, chaos, smashed glass, bullets flying, and find that productive, right? So that's all I'm saying, is that at the end of the day, if you think you're the guy that runs into the building because you want to help somebody or you want to see what's going on or whatever, then you're probably cut out for dangerous travel.
Do you think danger is the thing that that's made humans successful?
Overcoming risk, overcoming barriers is exactly why humans are the dominant species on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
If we were not aggressive, and if we were not consumers and hunters and gatherers and builders and travelers and explorers, whatever, I think we'd be sitting in caves in Africa quite happy, And I think it's the adaptation, the need to constantly learn from mistakes you make or things that need to be solved, like cold weather, crossing a river, an ocean, climbing a mountain. These all build skills, right?
Yeah.
So it's a natural thing for a human to absorb danger, risk, fear, whatever, and then overcome it, and then teach the next people, don't do that, or wait till this, or whatever, and then, and again, that's also mentoring, right? Yeah. Which is also missing in our society, where why do I have to recreate the wheel? Like, I'm 15 years old, I don't know anything, I want to do everything. Do I read books? Do I watch YouTube videos? Like, how do I do stuff, right? Yeah. Well, you look for the oldest still alive guy that's done all those things, right? Yeah. That's not me, but I'm just saying that.
That's why I say we're living in a new enlightenment right now, because we have a plethora of this happening right now with social media and YouTube. Well, specifically,
so
YouTube right now.
Let me ask you, how many experts are on YouTube? Yeah. All of them, right? It's like anything you want to know. How many of them are actually people that actually did?
Experts,
it winnows down because it's a youth-driven format, right? Yeah. And
but I think you bring up a good point. How do you get to the closest of that? You're looking for the old guy, and you're looking for the guy that's went and done the things and written the books and made, not just written the books, but made the documentaries, wrote the articles.
Right.
Is the source.
So I'll watch YouTube. I love YouTube, and I'll watch, like, holy shit, there I was, like, 50 Taliban surrounded me, and I did this and I did that, and I'm like, yeah, I did that, but I had dinner with them. In other words, it was like, I didn't ask them to kill me. I didn't do, and the point is that the idea of danger doesn't necessarily have a positive benefit to it, right? It's either like adversarial, like how to overcome this, or it's how to do this stunt, or how to do something like jump your car or drive through a swamp.
It's like Bear Grylls, There I was, man versus wild, man versus nature.
So, but let's talk about it. So Survivor was big, and Survivor was about social manipulation, sociopathy, like manipulating people. We had Bear Grylls. We had a bunch of guys, Dave Canterbury, all these people that were like rubbing two sticks together. Les Stroud is great. They all taught us like reliance or whatever. We don't have a lot of mental toughness people that use these skills, right? And what I mean by that is I learned more from an old boatman in British Columbia who didn't say a word, right? But just the efficiency with which he built camps, avoided rapids, built things or whatever. He didn't lecture me on like, oh, Sonny, you got to do this or whatever. It's what he did for a living, right? And I thought, self-sufficiency. Well, so first of all, personal self-sufficiency is the starting point. And then physical or tactical self-sufficiency, like what do you bring, what do you do, how do you build this, how do you start a fire, how do you eat things, how do you hunt, whatever. But then thirdly, like going into any place on earth, no matter how dangerous, how oppressive, and functioning, being productive, right? That's the ultimate skill. And that's what people did long before I was born, marching off to Asia or marching into Africa or whatever. And I think those skills are just really healthy skills for your mind, your body, for society, for decision making. Mm-hmm. And it's all based on truth. You can't lie in this business. You can't pretend to be smart or tougher or whatever.
Yeah, I've seen that.
You just have to solve problems, right? Yeah. And that usually means working with other people, not necessarily what you thought what the outcome would be, but and trusting people. That's the thing I take away from all this at the end is I still admire and respect people that I've never met. I can always learn something from somebody. I can always enjoy talking to them, and I think the environment today is kind of the opposite of that. Like the social media thing where fictional people are yelling insults at other fictional people and they're trying to polarize and this and that. That's the reverse trend, right? And I'm not saying I'm a hippie. I'm just saying that listening to somebody who respects your intellect that you want to learn, and then maybe moving the needle one way or the other, or learning something you didn't know.
Well, it's just so many people have ego, and it's like nobody wants to listen to each other. Like you can learn something from the guy that's.
But those are absolutes, you see.
Learn from the conservative and.
Right, but politics feeds off of polarity. Yes, no, bad, good.
Yeah.
And that polarity doesn't drive us forward. It kind of drives us apart.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying politics is the be-all, but when you travel around the world, you see a lot of political schisms driven between ethnic groups, political.
That's what we say. It's always like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and it's that monkey brain in us that's doing it. It's that part of us that loves that conflict. That
is that the monkey brain?
is just it stops it. I mean, that's the way I see it.
Well, for example, before 9/11, it wasn't a big deal, but I knew most of the terrorist groups. You know, I'd been with Al Qaeda, I'd been with all kinds of crazy fucking jihadis. They knew who I was. They read my book. And after 9/11, it was like, whoosh, oh, you must be one of them. I'm like, no, they were running the country, like, so I didn't really have a choice.
Interesting.
Or they were fighting the bad guys, because we remember the Soviets in Afghanistan, the jihadis were the good guys, and the Russians
you
were
were
the.
getting that sentiment because you were there. Hurrah, go America!
I got put on lists because I knew people. Like I'm actually interviewing an Al Qaeda member on CNN. I mean.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Okay, so before then, I used to sit and talk to the Al Qaeda guys, you know, and I didn't agree with what they were doing, but they had a reason for doing what they're doing. They.
Right. You're just trying to understand that.
I'm a journalist, right? So my point is that I have seen huge splits between trying to figure something out. You can form your own opinion, and people preventing you from trying to form your own opinion.
Totally.
And the first gap I've seen in that is with Hamas and Israel. You know, Israel is a very sophisticated PR operation. They do a thing called Hezbollah, which is, you know, we're the victims. They're picking on us. We have a right to survive. We have a right to defend ourselves. And these people are terrorists, which fine. We get that, right? And then suddenly they start losing traction on social media because we're physically seeing women and children being killed, and we're saying they didn't attack you. These aren't the people that you should be afraid of. But they're still saying we have to keep going, and you see the buildings drop, and all of a sudden young people who haven't been conditioned with the World War II Holocaust vision are saying that's wrong. It's like they're making absolute decisions about that's wrong. Now, Hamas is a terrorist organization, and it's got a complicated growth, but the point is that we don't have to pick a side. You know, these are people that are battling over their very existence. But that doesn't mean you have to pick one side over the other. Mm-hmm. And this is what's changing with the Generation Z, let's say, is that they're looking at things they have no investment in. And they're saying, I can find a friend from Gaza on the internet. Mm-hmm. I can literally hear somebody in Gaza tell me a story, like traveling, right? Yeah. And I appreciate theirs, and I can find somebody in Israel who I can hear their story, and I appreciate that. So maybe there is a movement away from that polarization.
I think so.
You know, from a higher level dictation of how we should view things.
I think it's a good thing. I think it's actually bringing the world together. I think it's a form of globalism that's building what, instead of the old Soviet or Eastern style of building walls, we're building webs. The internet, the interweb.
That's the hippie view.
Everything.
But that's my point, is that we can form our own opinion based on information. Maybe it's not pure, but we can form relationships with people in which it's a little bit dangerous to support or listen or endorse their statements, right? Mm-hmm. And we've seen a lot of journalists actually fired for picking a side, right? And I'm saying they didn't pick a side, they just expressed concern, right? And that censorship is exactly why I began this book, because the logo is a laughing skull. It's a nuked tourist with a "Do Not Enter" across it. And I used to give out those stickers. The very first logo for World's Most Dangerous Places was Mr. DP with a big "Do Not Enter" sign. No, before that.
Yeah, before this.
So my point is that they didn't want you to go places, right, because you might actually learn that
they still don't.
That's because the State Department says you can't go.
Yeah, yeah.
But imagine if you were a 19-year-old or a 16-year-old and you were in Gaza. How would that shape your opinion? And then another one that's in Israel, how would that shape their opinion? And let's say you went to both places and you were able to form an opinion based on that, right? That's healthy. That's healthy. But watching propaganda and being denied access, that's not healthy, because at the end of the day, you're going to feel betrayed, or you're going to say, hey, you didn't tell me the whole story.
It's so difficult watching media nowadays, because I'm watching things and I'm going, that's not propaganda, and then you're telling people why it's not propaganda, and then you're watching things that are propaganda, and then you're having those same conversations with people, and you're trying to describe why one is propaganda and one isn't propaganda, and it makes it really hard, like this Israel-Hamas thing that just popped up, because of how much propaganda there is now. And I'm having a conversation with these same people about the COVID vaccine. They're saying, well, if I can't trust the government about this, why can I trust the government about that?
Right. But a perfect example is the Taliban in Afghanistan, right? When I first went and met with the Taliban, they were hospitable, kind of shocked that I would hang out with them on the front lines and just try to understand what was going on, right? Then we had the war, and then they were the bad guys. You can't talk to them. Now, Taliban run Afghanistan, and you're starting to see YouTubers say, hey, I'm going to Afghanistan. And it's like, shake your hand. This guy's like walking around with his backpack, and it was like, welcome. And he's like freaking out because they don't hate me.
Yeah.
It's just a country full of poor people, and some of them remember the Americans, and some are too young or whatever. But the idea is he's shocked how safe it is. And I'm saying to him, when you were making your decisions to travel to Afghanistan, what was it that made you think it was dangerous? Well, 10, 20 years of video of people shooting at each other and whatever, right? So at the end of the day, I don't know that I could write another print book and keep it timely, but I can tell you that people are starting to use YouTube to say, look, I'm in Mogadishu and I'm sitting at the beach, and yes, they do blow up restaurants and hotels here, but that's not the norm, right? That's the exception. So it is coming back, that sense of adventure, and particularly post-COVID, people might be overcompensating by like, I'm going to go out there, I'm going to travel, see things, do things, and YouTube is a great way to share those experiences and ideas. And then, of course, if you develop a relationship,
it could be skewed a little bit by like what you're seeing on YouTube is also an extreme, and what people do extreme things just to get the views.
So right, excellent point. So this guy is saying, I'm in the world's most dangerous place. It's like, no, you're not, because you're still alive, and you're having fun, and everybody's waving at you, and they're like trying to sell you things, and it's like, no, it's not dangerous. You're saying that because you want to up your click count, right?
Right.
So, and I remember journalists used to come out here to interview me, and they're like, okay, where's the most dangerous place in LA? And I said, well, I'll take you to the most dangerous place, but I guarantee you it's not dangerous. And like, you drive up and down Inglewood, and it's like people waving, go get a taco. Yeah. It's like, well, where's all the killings and the shootings? And I'm like, they're gang related and they happen at night, but it's not that dangerous, right? It's you want it to be dangerous because when you write the story, you want to pump it up as being dangerous. Right. Now I'm saying, let's go to Ukraine on the front lines and meet some people that like literally artillery shells. Yes, that's dangerous, right? Yeah. But you're not going to see backpackers here making videos, right? So that's the difference. So.
Yeah, it is. All right, I think that's good.
All right. Okay, that's the end.